Welcome everybody to I'll Be Right Back, the show where we take a look at a horror movie. And since we're coming up on the spookiest day of the year, Peter, I want to take a look at what I think is a modern Halloween classic.
So obviously we watched this one last night, James, and you were over at
watch this together.
My house.
Yes, absolutely. Had a little cuddle on the sofa.
Yeah, it was snug. I've kept tight-lipped, and you asked us what I thought straight away, and I refused to tell you.
I love this film. I saw this in the cinemas last year for the first time when there was kind of an anniversary screening of some kind. Mate, I went with passed out drunk halfway through it, so I didn't actually get to talk about it with anyone afterwards. So here we are. I hope you love it. Go on, I'm dying with anticipation.
Okay. So I thought this was an absolute masterpiece. I loved every minute of it. It's right up my street. We've spoken before about my love of anthology series where it's like one story but there are interconnecting things, so you see people in the background from previous stories and it all starts to kind of piece together for the finale where you realise that all of these lives are interconnected, and that's exactly what happened in this movie, which I loved, absolutely loved. I don't think it's perfect. I think there are a couple of issues I had with it, but nothing that stopped my enjoyment. I loved pretty much every one of the little tales and some great characters. The little pumpkin head boy
Sam,
thing,
who's kind of grown to become a horror icon at this stage.
I think he's one of my favourites. I love
So
him.
he's like endearing and terrifying at the same time, like when he goes up with the little bag and gets his thing and then toddles off in his onesie. Just a little bit of background about the movie. Directed by Michael Dougherty. So he went on to do Krampus, which is another kind of holiday themed horror film that I am a fan of as well. And then he's kind of worked in blockbusters. He did Godzilla King of the Monsters, which is the Godzilla sequel. This is based on an animated short that he did back in the 90s, where it's like Sam going out, a predator of some kind goes after him and he murders him in an alley. Really short and simple, but I think it's awesome to spin an entire movie out of that. Straight off the bat, like the first scene, the tone of it, not straight horror, like it's very much a horror comedy.
I thought it was a really interesting twist. It built the scariness, I guess you'd call it, very well, because when she was taking the sheets off the line, it was very much building towards one of them being the killer, as it were. But then when he jumps out the linen box thing, I thought that was great. I would have liked to have seen more of the body parts hanging from the tree.
It's zoomed out a bit, isn't it?
Just
yeah,
to make
you don't
that
really see it that well.
Yeah, just a great start to the movie. We talked last time about Friday the 13th and how that was a bit of an odd start and didn't get us overly excited to watch the film. This was the exact opposite. Watch this and I thought, yeah, this is going to be what I
find it very strange that you would put so much effort into hanging up. Like, that is one of the best looking Halloween decoration sets I've ever seen. And to decide at 9 p.m, there's still kids out trick-or-treating. To decide at 9 p.m. that you're going to take everything down, I just thought was a bit strange. And doesn't she even go like, I don't like Halloween?
But I think, it's different because in America they go mad for Halloween, don't they? And I think all the houses are done up massively. I mean, all of it felt a little bit over the top for our English kind of decorations, I guess you'd say.
I do like how you see those two characters kind of throughout the entire movie, that those are kind of a constant, because this scene takes place at the end of the movie, really. So we're just seeing them bump into the girl that's getting attacked by the vampire and not helping. Like a very, oh, did you see that kind of moment? I thought it was quite cool. I know you're a big comic book guy, obviously. Were you a fan of like the comic book style kind of opening?
Oh, I thought that was amazing. Very much kind of Tales of the Crypt Keeper kind of thing with the pages flipping over, and I thought that looked really good fun. And I like the way it kind of showed you the stories to come, so you kind of knew a little bit of what you were getting to. Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, the reason that's in there is that there was a tie-in comic book. I'm not sure if it's an adaptation or an actual ties around it, releasing the time up to it and getting delayed. They kept the intro for it anyway. I love the style of it. Something the movie doesn't do, it splices between all these different stories as it goes, instead of like telling one and then jumping and telling the other.
I prefer that, because you could have very easily kind of had a bookend point at the end of each tale where, I don't know, flicked the comic pages or something. It works, but it would have been quite disjointed. I like the fact that this was all just one smooth kind of run through. It kind of did that anyway, I guess, because you could argue that it kept saying earlier that night or whatever it was. I can't remember what the text says. It keeps kind of telling you this happened earlier, this happened earlier.
Possibly my favorite character in this is Principal Wilkins, who's played by Dylan Baker. You might recognize him as Dr. Connors from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. He is just incredible in this movie. He's hilarious. He brings this kind of zaniness to it, but not like too over the top. I love when he's sitting down with the kid from Bad Santa and he's like, don't forget to check your candy and everything. I just thought that was brilliant, that kind of twist that he's the serial killer when he's digging the body in the back garden.
Yeah, I thought he was really, really good. I think he's a stunning actor. At the end of this one, it really made us kind of think, wow, this is going to be a really interesting movie. Every single one of these individual tales, I wanted to go back and see more of that character. I don't think any of the tales ended with us thinking, oh, I'm glad that one's finished. I was slightly confused at the start because of the colour in the chose when the kid starts vomiting. I wasn't sure if it was just chocolate he was being sick. It wasn't until you went inside and you saw the red on the shirt that I realised it was blood.
The first time I saw it, I thought it was like a razor blade stuck in his throat.
Superbly acted and a great twist at the end. I wasn't expecting that. I thought he was going to kill his son. And again, like I say, I want to know no more. They didn't kill any of the bad guys in this, so everybody's there for another story or another series. Do you know what I mean? None of the main kind of story elements ended. You could continue in them on in any other way you wanted.
Well, Wilkins dies.
Which one's Wilkins again?
The principal guy. The guy we were just talking about. He dies at the end.
How does he die at the end?
The werewolf. He's the vampire guy.
Fuck, missed that one.
Well, if it's getting an amazing, I mean, I think that's pretty good praise. Yeah, no, that's him.
Oh, and that's why his son sat in the steps
On his own, dressed as him, waiting for him.
Yeah.
And he says earlier, like, I have a date tonight. There's so much dialogue, I think, that like teases things. Wilkins dies at the end of the werewolf storyline.
I can't believe I missed that.
I can't believe you missed that. There's sort of teases throughout Anna Paquin's segment. The way it's presented to us, it's like college girls who are going out partying for a night of like sex. And it turns out, that they're werewolves. But there's like dialogue throughout it that hints at that's a one. She's wearing a Red Riding Hood outfit, which is kind of the first tease. The bit in the changing room where one of the girls goes, "We'll huff and puff and blow the house down." They refer to like men as like, oh, fresh meat. When they're talking, they're not hiding it, but it's just the context of it is different. And there's so many things like that you pick up on a rewatch.
I thought the werewolf one was brilliant. Some great actors in this that I wasn't necessarily expecting. I thought this was a low budget direct-to-video almost kind of thing.
It initially was, I think, supposed to be direct-to-DVD, and it just got such good buzz at film festivals that they had a limited cinema release for it.
I was blown away initially by how many good actors were in it. I'd kind of worked out that something wasn't quite right when she was walking through the woods. The removal of the flesh to expose the werewolf hair
it's such a great effect.
Superb.
Yeah.
And I've not seen that before. I've seen it rip out of skin, but not actually taking it off itself. That was amazing.
Yeah, and the way it's shot, it's like they're taking off their clothes. It's almost like sexually done.
My only moan, if I was being a grumpy old sod, the practical effects of the werewolf itself.
It did look a bit like Jim Henson-y, I felt.
Tip of the hat to them for trying to do proper practical effects. It was too jarring to see the real superb effects of the skin being ripped off and the makeup of the faces turning into the werewolves. And then you saw the full werewolf sat next to it and it just looked a little bit like, say, Jim Henson.
Were you a fan of like the Universal Monsters-y vampire going through the festival?
I didn't think it was going to be fake. I thought he was going to be a vampire. But by the time he was kind of following the Red Riding Hood character, I thought, there's going to be a twist here. I think for me what happened was you saw the first story, there was the twist end of not killing his son.
Don't forget to help me with the eyes.
Yeah, there was that bit. As soon as I saw that, I thought, each of these tales is going to have some kind of twist. So with the vampire one, I started to think, there's something not quite right here. They'd hinted at werewolves earlier on. You'd heard a werewolf or howling in one of the previous stories.
In the trick-or-treaters story, you hear the witch girl says, "Oh, werewolves."
So as soon as she said that and you heard the wolf, I thought, there's going to be some werewolves in this at some point. I think it was when she was walking the street, my brain clicked in then, thought, Little Red Riding Hood, there's going to be a werewolf twist here somewhere along the lane.
On the topic of the trick-or-treater storyline, I absolutely adore this one. I love the layers of it with the school bus in the kind of background. And I love the setup of this. So you see those kids earlier, they knock on the principal's door and ask for the jack-o'-lantern. I love that they're having a more difficult time getting them because that kid from earlier was smashing all the pumpkins. So the way that kind of tied into that, I thought was really clever as well. Interesting to throw like a teacher orgy into the middle of this.
Yeah, that was a bit odd. I mean, there was some quite interesting sex scenes in this, wasn't it? It was a little bit near the knuckle at times, but that was a bit of an odd one.
I don't think the handsome kid should have died. He clearly regretted what he'd done and he didn't deserve to go out like that.
I've got a question for you then, because again, I may have missed this completely as well, because I've obviously been asleep when I watched this. The bus driver checking the locks and stuff on all the kids and things like that, and he was going down the bus handing them all sweets. Was he going to get out and let the bus roll or something?
I think that was the idea, or maybe they were poisoned, something like that.
That's because I couldn't work out whether he was poisoning the kids or what, but I thought that was great. I did clock pretty much straight away, later on in the movie, who he was going to be.
They mentioned it a few times, like who's never seen again and what happened to the bus driver.
So you kind of knew he was coming back at some point. But a lovely little story. I love the visuals of the kids. This is a bizarre movie in some regards because at points I was thinking this is almost family horror.
I think this is Goosebumps for adults. It throws in a lot of like violence and there's even a bit of nudity. The nudity in this movie I think is just completely unnecessary. There's like a bit at the beginning where they put on a porn video. It's like that didn't really need to be on screen.
Yeah, that was bizarre. I think Goosebumps is a great analogy. There were times when I thought this is something that I could quite happily watch with the kids, and I think that ghost story story in particular. Then all of a sudden, it flipped to quite graphic horror. The werewolves removing the skin, or the Stanley knife blade slicing ankles.
That's one of the reasons it's so endearing, is it kind of reminds you of those more PG horror things that you watched when you were younger, but it's for you, like it has that kind of goriness that you enjoy as an adult. So the kind of last segment of this, I would argue the best one, probably, I think
it's my favourite.
Yeah, it's sort of the slasher segment of this. Brian Cox plays the cranky old neighbour, who we see earlier in the movie.
I didn't clock that was Brian Cox at all. He was phenomenal in this.
Oh, fantastic, yeah. Just his like wheezing. He's just wheezing constantly as he walks around. I love the trick-or-treaters come up and the door opens and you just see these glowing eyes and the dog runs out. I just love how it escalates. Little patters around, he goes upstairs and it turns into like a full-blown just fight scene. Seeing what looks like a little 9-year-old kid just flinging around on the top of him. He like shoots him against the wall and he just slides and like slams.
Oh, the action was amazing. I loved the bit when he was kind of climbing along the ceiling and you could see him behind him.
One of my favourite shots of the movie.
Yeah, I thought it was tremendous. The glass bit had us screaming. I loved it. But probably my main criticism of the movie, as soon as you took the hessian bag off and you saw the pumpkin face, it didn't do it for us, I'm afraid. I love the concept of it. I think the idea of, the tendrils of the pumpkin pulling itself back together and stuff like that, I loved that. I thought that was great. I think it was scarier, just the little bag. The head just looked odd to me. It just looked a bit silly.
I think like the first shot of it is CG, isn't it? That kind of initial
Well, it was very much like the werewolf bit. It just kind of took us out of it a bit. Didn't spoil the film for us, but out of kilter with the rest of it for me.
I guess there is like a mystique to Sam, and like you see him throughout the movie kind of pop up at the various storylines, waving or watching, and
I guess it's a bit like, a bit like Jason. I don't want to say Jason necessarily with his mask off, do you know what I mean? It's the mystique of what's underneath it. I don't know why, again, I've not seen any of the figures of Sam. I thought I'd seen something with you just seeing kind of the bottom half of his mouth. I thought, oh, that would work. But when you took the full hessian bag off and it was literally a pumpkin for a head, it was kind of like, this looks a bit...
Well, I like it, Peter, so you're wrong. I think it's a good...
Is that how it works?
I think it's a good...
That's how
I'm actually mostly a fan of when he puts the bag back on and it's kind of the bottom part is hanging off. I think that's quite a cool look for him, so I like that you get to see it. I think it's fair to be like, oh, they should have kept the kind of allure of it, but I like how it was executed. I like the design. How do you feel about how it ends? So like he goes for a stab and hits the candy bar and...
hilarious. Was he defending the kids who hadn't been given chocolate? Because that would have made more sense if he'd been trick-or-treating and the people had said no to him. Then he kills them.
I think he's there to punish people who go against the Halloween spirit. He's a grumpy man scaring away trick-or-treaters instead of giving them candy.
And when he gives them some candy, that stops it.
Yeah, exactly. Like he stabs the candy and like, oh, that's an exchange of a chocolate bar, so he walks away. That's why he punishes the lady at the start end, because she's taking the decorations down and blowing the candles out. And I love how just by the end of this movie, it just all comes full circle. Like it ends where it began. If you look back at the start of the movie, you see the witch girl walking with her one pumpkin. The car that nearly hits her is the girls from the werewolf thing. Like I just think it's so clever that it's telling you everything at the beginning. Right, so a little bit of trivia about this movie. The kid that is spying on the girls in the changing room is the actor who plays Sam. That's Quinn Lord.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so
okay.
Same actor. He got a little cameo in there. A red 1958 Plymouth Fury can be spotted in one of the scenes. This is the same car from John Carpenter's Christine.
Oh, cool.
I clocked that immediately because I've just recently watched that movie.
That's a cool little nod. I like that.
And lastly, each segment of the movie is supposed to represent like a different stage of a person's experience of Halloween. So Michael Dougherty said, the first story with Dylan Baker and his son is about how you're introduced to the holiday. The second one with the kids is you and your friend roaming around without parents for the first time. The Anna Paquin one is about Halloween in your 20s, when it's like kind of about like sex and partying. And the final story with Brian Cox is Halloween in your twilight years. So it's the Scrooge
That's really clever.
of Halloween.
I mean, I didn't pick that up during the movie, to be honest, but now you've said it, yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Any final thoughts on Trick or Treat?
I absolutely loved it. One of my favourites now, I think. It's a one that I will definitely go back and rewatch. I'll definitely go back and rewatch it tonight, actually, because I can't believe I missed that the principal was the vampire guy. That's mind blown. But what's even more mind blown is that this is a standalone movie.
I don't understand why there's not 10 of these movies. Michael Dougherty recently said they're working on a sequel of some kind, so yeah, I'd be absolutely here to see that.
Don't reinvent the wheel, just give us exactly the same. 4 tales, interlinking into each other like that. Or even, like I said, pick up with some of these characters, find out what's happened with the werewolves and all the rest. I just loved it, so I can't believe, when you see some of the sequels to some of the crap that come out, it blows my mind that this isn't more of a franchise.
I adore this movie. This is one of my absolute favorites. I think it's one of the best horror movies, horror love letters in the last 20, 30 years. So many iconic characters, so clever, so many good twists. I just love the the Easter eggness of it, the kind of blink and you miss it moments, and the kind of rewatchability of it. Those are the things I really love in films. So this movie is like almost exactly made for me, and I'm so happy you like it, Peter, because I love it too.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
So that's I'll Be Right Back on Trick or Treat. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out the channel where we do one good scare live every second Friday, and we'll be right back next time with...
Never, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.